All right, let's get into a really wild story today. We're going to unpack how one very specific piece of clothing, the Japanese school uniform, somehow went from being a niche anime thing to a full-blown billion yuan fashion industry on the streets of modern China. This is a story about culture, about community, and, you guessed it, about some very serious money.
So you see a picture like this, and your first thought is probably cosplay, right? Or maybe it's just a small hobby for some super dedicated anime fans. But the truth is, it's so much bigger than that. This isn't just about dressing up. It's a massive fashion movement and a legitimate industry that has some very smart investors paying very close attention.
So let's dive right in. What you have to understand is that this isn't just people buying clothes. This is a highly structured scene. It's got its own rules, its own lingo, and a super passionate community that basically built this thing from the ground up into a real fashion category.
Okay, first things first. We need to be clear. This is not cosplay. It's a specific fashion category, and it's known as JK uniforms. Now, JK is just shorthand for Joshikose, which is Japanese slang for a high school girl. And believe it or not, these uniforms are just one piece of a much larger trend. That larger trend is called Sankeng apparel, which literally translates to three pits apparel. And that word pit is just a fantastic piece of slang. It's basically the Chinese equivalent of saying you've fallen down a rabbit hole. You get so into something you can't get out. The three pits, or rabbit holes, are JK uniforms, traditional Chinese Hanfu, and Lolita fashion.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because we have to talk about the money behind all this. This isn't just a few fans buying an outfit here and there. We are talking about a market with some serious economic firepower.
The estimated market size for the entire Sankeng apparel scene, a whopping 20 billion yuan. Now, to give you some perspective, that's nearly the same size as the entire market for general otaku goods, things like anime figures and merchandise, in China. So, yeah, this is not a small hobby, it's a massive economic force.
But here's the number that really gets investors excited. It's the average annual spend per user, or ARPU. While the total markets are a similar size, the average Sankeng fan spends almost 3 times more per year than a general otaku fan. That level of spending from each person shows an incredible amount of passion and, of course, huge market potential.
So, where do our JK uniforms fit into this big picture? Well, the market is split almost perfectly, right down the middle, between the three pits. This means JK uniforms aren't some tiny little niche, they are a core pillar, making up about a third of this whole incredibly lucrative industry.
So the big question is, how did this even happen? How did a Japanese school uniform, of all things, become a mainstream fashion statement for a whole new generation in China? Well, it was a cultural journey that actually took decades to unfold.
The seeds were really planted way back in the 80s when Japanese anime started introducing this look to Chinese audiences. Then in the mid-2000s, you had the massive J-pop group AKB48, who made their uniform-style stage outfits iconic. But the real tipping point, the explosion, happened in 2020. The hit Chinese reality show Produce 101 put all its contestants in these uniform-inspired outfits, and the trend just went viral.
And that was the spark that just lit the entire forest fire. All of a sudden, social media was completely flooded with videos of young women dancing to the show's theme song, all while wearing their own JK uniforms. This huge, user-generated wave is what took the trend from a niche subculture to a mainstream phenomenon, practically overnight.
But this sudden explosion in popularity, well, it created a brand new problem: fakes. And the community's response to this is honestly one of the most fascinating parts of the whole story, because the fans themselves literally took control and shaped the entire market.
So, as demand just skyrocketed, the market got flooded with cheap, low-quality knockoffs. But the hardcore fans, the real believers, they were not having it. So they formed this kind of informal online patrol, calling themselves the JK Police, and their mission was to protect the integrity of their subculture.
They even came up with their own slang for it, which is pretty clever. Anyone caught wearing a cheap knockoff uniform was called a chuanshanja. Now, the word literally means pangolin, but it's used as a play on words that sounds like one who wears fakes. For this community, authenticity was absolutely everything.
In fact, this fan community created a super clear, almost rigid hierarchy of value.
Right at the very top, the holy grail, are actual used uniforms from real Japanese schools, incredibly prized and hard to get. Just below that are authentic Japanese brands like Konami. Then come Chinese-made uniforms that use imported Japanese fabric, followed by original domestic Chinese brands, and of course, way down at the very bottom are those cheap Shenzai fakes.
Now here is the crucial point. This fan-driven obsession with quality and authenticity didn't just push out the fakes. It created a massive business opportunity for legitimate, high-quality, domestic Chinese companies to rise to the occasion.
And rise they did. If you look at the top JK uniform sellers on Taobao, China's biggest e-commerce site, the undisputed leader is a brand called Zhanpai. It's a domestic Chinese brand that built its entire reputation on original designs and high quality. Their most popular model, the Yamabuki, sold over 60,000 units. That proved a domestic brand could completely own this market.
I mean, this was a fundamental shift in how the whole market worked. The old way was super complicated. Chinese fans had to use these complex, expensive proxy services to try and bid on used uniforms from Japanese auction sites. The new model? It's a completely self-sufficient domestic ecosystem. You've got Chinese companies handling everything from design and manufacturing all the way to direct-to-consumer sales.
And now we're even seeing the next evolution of this with companies like Galaxy Cat. They brand themselves as a third space for young women, somewhere that isn't home or school. But the real secret sauce is their business model. They use data analytics to predict trends and basically engineer hit products. Their success got them a huge investment from PopMart, the giant behind the blind box toy craze, and now they're expanding their physical stores all across the country.
So what does this incredible, kind of crazy story of the JK uniform really tell us? Well, it's way more than just a passing fad. It's a powerful case study in how modern consumer markets are actually born and how they evolve.
The real takeaway here is that this whole phenomenon provides a blueprint. It's a playbook for how to create a market. It starts with a cultural import from another country. Then, a passionate fan community adopts it, and this is the key part, they police its authenticity. That creates a huge demand for quality, which then fuels the rise of a powerful, self-sustaining domestic industry that can eventually stand on its own 2 feet.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty fascinating question. What is the next JK uniform? What other niche, foreign subculture or product is out there right now, just waiting to follow this exact same path and become the next billion-yuan industry in China?